Hello, everyone. Hello, 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 and welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. I want to thank you who are watching on my YouTube. Thank you guys again for joining. I am always encouraged, and I can't say this enough. I'm always encouraged by your comments, by your thoughts, and even your expressions that the information that I'm sharing is helping your organization to be more solid, to be more strategic, and ultimately to be successful and sustainable. For those of you that are listening in on my podcast, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so very much for joining. I appreciate you. You are fundable by design. And so it is my pleasure to be able to just really break down different concepts and information that I hope will help take your organization from the place or past the place of startup and to the place of sustainability because you are indeed fundable by design. Today, I want to dive into something that most people don't talk about, but you guys know me. I'm going to talk about things that no one else talks about in an effort to give you real information. To give you the full concept of what a nonprofit is and what it's not, and how you, as the founder, as the executive director, as the leader, what it is that you should be strategizing around as it relates to running it, as it relates to growing it, as it relates to funding it. All right, to ensure that your program is able to grow, to scale, and to reach as many people as possible, the number of people that you actually want to help. I want to talk today about something that is a very dangerous mistake. And this is a very common, dangerous mistake, all right, as it relates to starting your nonprofit. Many of you are starting your nonprofit, your organization, based upon your idea instead of a community need. I'm going to say that again. A very dangerous mistake, which is causing and resulting in many of you struggling as it relates to funding, struggling as it relates to finding donors, supporters, contributors, sponsors for your work. Think about this. I really want you to do a clear assessment. Did you start your organization, your nonprofit, your program based on your idea or based on a community need? Now, let's talk about it, okay? I know for many of you, your program is very personal to you. Jen, I started my nonprofit because of what happened to me. Jen, I started my nonprofit because this is my background, or I have a son, or I have a daughter, or I have someone close to me. And so, because of my experience in this particular area, I want to start a nonprofit to help others like me. Hear me now. And so many of you are starting your nonprofit based on your idea, based on your emotion, based on your personal experience instead of a community need. Your desire to help people, right? Jen, I want to help people like me. Jen, I want to keep people from going through what I went through. Jen, I want to put together a program because this is my background. I was a teacher. So I want to start an organization, Jen, that mentors. Jen, I worked in banking. And so I want to start an organization that deals with financial literacy, right? So your desire to help people is not enough to build a sustainable nonprofit. And this is a very real hidden problem behind many of your organizations. One of the most common reasons people start nonprofits, noble on the surface, right? Very noble on the surface. You may say, Jen, I really want to help people, or I see something missing in our community, right? Jen, we don't have a community center, so I want to create a community center. Or Jen, there's nothing like this in our community. And so I want to start something. And at first glance, that seems admirable, right? That seems like you really want to step in and solve a problem. But let's think about it from the other side of the field, okay? What many of you don't realize, because nobody talks about it, right? But what many of you don't realize is that starting a nonprofit based primarily on what you want to do instead of what the community actually needs can create a serious problem later. I can't tell you guys the number of times people say to me, Jen, I want to start a nonprofit to help single moms. Jen, I want to start a nonprofit to mentor. Jen, I want to start a ministry because that's important to me. Jen, I want to start whatever it is you want to start. Jen, I want to help single moms because I was a single mom. Jen, I want to open up an organization in honor of someone that was important to me. And so you started your organization based upon what you want to do instead of what the community actually needs. I want you to hear me now. Because as an organization, our organizations are intended to benefit the community. Let me say it more plainly. Our organizations are created to meet a need, not for what you want to do. And again, nobody talks about this. The moment that your organization begins asking for funding, for donors, for supporters, I want you to ask this question. I want you to ask yourself a real question. And let me say this. If there is no real need, then you cannot prove that you have a real solution. I'm going to say that again for the people in the bushes. If you cannot define the need, then you can't explain why your organization exists and what solution you bring. Now, you can talk about your activities, but activities is not a solution. So I want you to ask yourself this. Is there a real demand for this program? Are there already organizations addressing this issue in the community? Another one. What evidence shows that this program will make a difference? You guys, listen. I say to you all often that money is not your problem, right? Money is not the problem of the nonprofit. Money is not the problem. Usually the problem is that the person that started the nonprofit organization didn't know how to set it up, didn't know how to structure it, and now cannot explain why this work matters. Why does the mission matter? Why is this program needed? Because that's the question of the funder, the donor, the supporter, the contributor. Again, they're not giving you their money because of what you want to do. And if you have not done the research to answer these questions, the organization quickly runs into difficulties raising support. Why? Because you can't explain. Is there a demand for this program? Are there other organizations already doing this work? And what makes your work different from theirs? If you're not able to respond to these questions, you are going to have difficulty answering the questions or meeting the expectations of the donor, the funder, the supporter, the contributor. And that's where and why many of you are struggling right now with getting donors. Jen, we don't have any donors. Jen, we don't have any funders. Jen, we don't have any. Jen, I'm having a hard time getting grant funding. Why? Because you can't describe, you can't articulate what's the real need for this program. We know what you want to do, but what's the need for it? So listen, today we're going to talk about it. Is that all right? We're going to talk about it today. Today, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about where the idea of starting a nonprofit based on personal passion, where does that come from? Right? Where does it come from that I just want to start a nonprofit, Jen? We're going to talk about why do you skip the research process? How the Google approach, come with me now, I'm telling the truth, how you approach starting your nonprofit with Google and how that contributes to your confusion of how do I run it? How do I raise money for it? How do I get board members? How do I grow it? Why am I paying for everything out of my pocket? And we're also going to talk about why your infrastructure and your community validation must come before funding. You are a community-based business. You are not a personal idea. All right, let's start in the beginning. I want to talk about where the I want to help people mindset came from. Okay. For those of you guys who are new to me, my name is Jennifer. I am known as the nonprofit expert. I've been in this field and in this business of running and working with nonprofits to make sure that they are scalable and fundable for 40 years. May will be 40 years I've been in this business. I am a grant writer. I'm a professional fundraiser, and I'm a nonprofit strategist. And so I have seen the nonprofit field and business industry change over the last 40 years. But what has remained the same is why people give. That has never changed. That people give to people, that has never changed. What has changed is how many of you now approach the nonprofit startup. All right. Most of you begin with genuine compassion, right? You see a problem and you want to help. And listen, that motivation is valuable. But the nonprofit sector was not designed simply for people to act on personal inspiration. I'm going to say that again for the people in the bushes. The nonprofit organization was not designed simply for people to act on personal inspiration. It was designed to organize resources. Hear me now. It was designed to organize resources around verified needs. We do the work that government cannot do. We do the work that for-profit businesses cannot do. So our work and the resources, the money, the donations, the contributions, the grants, the partnerships, the sponsorships, those resources are organized or given to those organizations that have a verified social need, not this is what I want to do. And there's a big difference. There's a huge difference. You have those of you that say, Jen, I want to start my nonprofit because you've got good intention. Good intention. Jen, I want to help the homeless. Jen, I want to help people like me. Jen, I want to help people not go through what I went through. Jen, I want to create this because it doesn't exist. Jen, I want to help. That's good intention. But that's different than a validated community need. A good intention starts with what you want to do. Jen, I want to help single moms. Jen, because I was a single mom. Jen, I want to help you. I want to help young people, Jen, who have a problem like my young person. Or Jen, I was in this career path for a long, long time, and I see a need. So I decided that I want to start a nonprofit because this has been my career path. And it's what you want to do. nothing wrong with that. That's good intention. But that's not why nonprofits are started, which is why many of you are having difficulty right now finding funding for it. A validated need begins with listening and knowing the community and understanding what problems actually require solution. And many of you skip this step entirely. Listen, this is why something missing doesn't always mean something is needed. Jen, we don't have a community center in our community. We need to build one. Jen, we don't have anything like this in our community. We need money to put one there because there's not one there. Because something is missing doesn't mean that it's needed. Right? In relation to the community center, Jen, I want to build a community center for youth, right? Because youth don't have anything to do. So I want to build a community center in my neighborhood. I want to start one because we don't have one. Just because it's absent does not automatically mean that the community needs it. And there may be reasons that this service does not exist. Perhaps the community uses schools or churches or parks for gatherings. It could be that previous community center attempts failed due to what? Lack of participation, particularly for those of you that are in those rural areas where people are moving away. Now you done built this whole center and these young people get up and grow up and then they move away. Lack of participation. It could also be that local funding priorities, hear me now, local funding priorities are focused somewhere else. So without the research, you risk building programs that the community never fully adopts. Have you guys thought about that? Maybe why you're struggling getting board members, why you're struggling getting funders and donors and supporters? Have you thought about your community is like, do we need this? Are you able to articulate that we need this? Or are you talking about what you started and why what you started is important to you? Because when donors evaluate the organization, they are evaluating the organization. They are not evaluating what you want to start. That's why many of you feel so personal about this. That's why many of you feel like, oh my gosh, what if they reject what I'm doing? No, it's not. You've got to be able to show, you've got to be able to communicate, you've got to be able to clarify the evidence that the program addresses a real and measurable need. But because many of you are coming from a place of emotion, this is what I want to do, this is what is of interest to me, that's why many of you are afraid of rejection. But if you're able to verify, if you're able to clarify, if you're able to describe the community need, then why would the community not want it? You're able to prove that there is a need for it. No, but you guys have approached it from a place of this is mine, this is mine, this is my idea, this is what I want to do. And that's why many of you hold it to your chest and why you're afraid, because you're not able to clarify, to verify, to validate the need for it. Let me tell you guys why many of you skip this step. All right, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Okay. Let me say that. I'm not here to beat up anybody. I'm just here to tell the truth and I'm going about my business. Okay. But let me tell you why many of you skip this step. First, your passion to do the work that matters to you can create urgency. Jen, I want to help single moms like me. Jen, I want to help young people. Jen, I want to feed the homeless. Jen, I want to help veterans, right? And so, first, your passion creates the urgency. And so, when you start feeling strongly about helping others, you often want to act immediately, which is why many of you went out there, got that piece of paper, right? Because now you have gone online. You went online because you want to act quickly, right? And you went online and asked about starting a nonprofit. How do I start a nonprofit? And the responses that you got back from Cousin Chad and Uncle Google and YouTube University, and many of the people out here in these streets who say, I can help you start your nonprofit. I can do the paperwork. I can help you start your nonprofit. I can do the paperwork. And because of your urgency, you're following the people that say, start a nonprofit, you can get a grant. Start a nonprofit, you can get a grant. And because of your urgency, you focus on the paperwork rather than the program validation. I'm going to say that again for the people in the bushes. Your focus is now on the paperwork, because once I get my paperwork, I can get started doing this program that I'm urgent and feeling very excited to do, as opposed to the program validation. If you were to type into Google right now, how to start a nonprofit, most search results describe steps like choose a name, file the incorporation documents, apply for your 501c3 status. And while these steps are technically correct, they create the impression that forming the organization is the starting point. I'm going to say that again for the people in the bushes. That forming the organization is where you start. And in reality, the formation comes much later, which is why many of you are struggling now with funding, which is why many of you are struggling with getting board members, supporters, contributors, or even the grant. You started it out of order. Now, again, you didn't know. Right? Now, why? Why is it that Google and AI, why do they emphasize the paperwork? Why do they emphasize paperwork? Search engines, not experts, not professionals, not people who've done the work. No, search engines prioritize answers that are simple and procedural. That's it. It's just a search engine, and it's going to give you a simple answer, and it's going to give you a checklist. It's easy to explain, right? That's what the search engine is going to do. It's going to make it real simple for you. Now, it ain't going to be right, but it prioritizes the answers that are the procedures. Y'all know, y'all go over there to Cousin Chat, y'all get the checklist. Y'all are all running around trying to find a checklist. How do I file the paperwork? Right? It's easier to explain how to file the paperwork than it is to explain how do you build the infrastructure required to sustain a nonprofit organization. Did you hear the difference? You type in, how do I start a nonprofit? And it gives you a simple checklist. It's easier to explain the checklist of how do I file a nonprofit? Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. That's easier for that search engine to explain than How do you build the infrastructure required to sustain the nonprofit organization? Because infrastructure involves things like governance, financial planning, fundraising systems, program design, community partnerships, and these elements are complex and require real experience to understand. That's why 90% of y'all are struggling. Because you went to Cousin Chat, you went to Uncle Google, you went to YouTube University, and you found a checklist. And none of that checklist talked about the elements of what it's going to take to run the organization, to sustain the organization, to lead the organization, to grow financially the work and the money to do the work, because those are harder to summarize. Did you hear what I said? They are harder to summarize in quick articles. And because of that, they receive less attention in the search results. And so this creates a situation where you learn how to legally form an organization, but not how. Hear me now, not how to build one that can survive. How do we know that's true? Jen, I started my nonprofit, but we don't have any funding. Jen, I started my nonprofit, but we don't have any donors. Jen, I started my nonprofit, and I can't find board members. Jen, I started my nonprofit and I'm paying for everything out of my pocket. Jen, I started my nonprofit, but we had to stop because we couldn't get any money. Now you formed it, but you didn't know how to build it to survive. And these are the consequences. These are the consequences of you skipping the infrastructure. Now, you don't know, right? Because nobody's talking about this but me. You don't know what it takes to run a nonprofit organization because you've never run one. You don't know what it takes to start and to run and to organize a nonprofit because you've never done it. And the search engine that you relied on is not telling you the truth. If it were, why are you stuck? If it were, how come you don't have funding and supporters and contributors? Everybody else does. You are experiencing the consequences. When you start a nonprofit without validating the community need or building the organization's infrastructure to sustain itself, you get several problems that appear. Several problems. And you guys can tell me, have you experienced any of these problems? Okay. You got several problems. Problem number one: donors, funders, supporters, your community, they hesitate to give because the impact is not clear. Impact is not the word impact. Impact says change. Impact said there was a problem and now you solved it. Number two, grant makers ask questions that you can't easily answer. This is the problem now. This is the consequence. This is the consequence that the grant funder is asking questions that you can't answer. Board members struggle to understand the strategic direction of the organization. Now, you may tell them about the program that you started. You may tell them about why you started it. You may talk about your background and your passion for the work, but there's no strategic direction for the organization. And that's the purview of the board, not your passion, not the program, but the strategic direction of the organization. Here's another consequence. Your program may operate for a short time, but then fail to grow. That's not supposed to happen when it's done right. And so eventually you become responsible. You are the founder. You become responsible for sustaining the organization personally, right? Jen, I started my nonprofit, but I'm paying for everything out of my pocket. Jen, I started my nonprofit, but we don't have any donors. We don't have any funders. We don't have any supporters, Jen. Jen, I started my nonprofit and we don't have any help. Jen, I started my nonprofit and we had to stop because I ran out of money. And then this leads to burnout, frustration, and then you quietly close the organization. Let me tell you what you guys should do instead, okay? Instead, before starting your nonprofit organizations, you should really focus on some very critical steps. The first thing is research the problem that you want to address, okay? Where are there other conversations happening in your community about this problem? Who is it that are the problem solvers of this particular problem in the community? Those are people that you're going to want to know, right? You're going to want to know who's out in the community having conversations, making decisions, distributing the funding for this particular problem. What other organizations currently exist that's also addressing this problem? I'm going to give you an example. When I worked as the vice president of the Los Angeles mission, down on Skid Row, there probably is about 7 to 9 missions all on Skid Row, right? All of us are missions. Now, those are the existing organizations. They're all missions. But when it comes down to now speaking about specific problems of this particular community, those that are unhoused, how are each organization different? One mission may work with families that are unhoused. They may have the whole family intact and they need support for the entire family. Some may say, well, Jen, we're working with men, or we're working with women. Are we working with those that are unhoused that may have mental health issues, right? We're not all doing the same thing. We're all helping the same community, but we're helping and we've identified a specific need within this community that we can address as our niche, right? So that means you know what other organizations are doing the work, how your organization is doing the work differently. Second, you want to determine whether a new organization is actually needed or whether collaboration with an existing organization might be more effective. Now, I know y'all don't want no collaboration because you want to start it because it's passionate to you. I'm just telling you the difference, okay? The other thing is what you should do is design your programs based on evidence, not based on your passion, not based on what you want to do. And fourth, you want to build an infrastructure that is required for sustainability. You want to build the infrastructure which is required for sustainability. And many of you think that your infrastructure starts with your program or with your paperwork, and that's not true. Infrastructure includes financial systems, fundraising strategies, program evaluation methods, right? A functioning board, your brand, your marketing, the strength of your relationships. Only after these things begin to take shape should you consider the paperwork. But many of you guys do that backwards. You go out, get the paperwork, and then turn around and say, Jen, I need board members. Jen, we don't have a fundraising plan. Yeah, Jen, we're doing our program, but we're not evaluating our program. You're doing it backwards. Listen, the desire to help others is an important starting point, but sustainable organizations require more than good intentions. They require planning. They require infrastructure. And because many of you are so emotionally tied to what you want to do and that urgency to skip those steps, you are driven by the urgency to help, but not the urgency to prove that what you do is important and makes a difference to the community. You want to help a particular population, but they're not your donors. They're not your funders. They're not your supporters. They're not your contributors. Those people that you want to help are not your supporters, your contributors. Those that are your donors, your funders, your supporters, your contributors, you've got to be able to show, you've got to be able to communicate, you've got to be able to articulate, you've got to be able to clarify that what you do is needed. It's the resource that are allocated to areas of need, not your passion. And when you begin with community need and you build the organization infrastructure carefully, deliberately, strategically, then you're able to now to have an organization that's capable for long-term impact. Many of you are struggling right now because you did exactly the opposite of what I'm telling you. Because when organizations start primarily from personal ideas without validation, you struggle to gain support. And that support is what you need to survive. Listen, if you're thinking about starting a nonprofit, I want you to take the time to understand that you are a community-based organization. You need to understand the community that you serve. You are a community-based organization. You serve the community. You didn't start this thing because of what you wanted to do. You need to listen before you build. You need to know how to organize the organization. And you need to build the infrastructure that will allow your mission to thrive for years to come. The truth is this: you are fundable by design. Your organization is not struggling. Your organization is not struggling because of lack of money. Your organization is struggling for lack of planning. For lack of planning. I want to say thank you for joining me. I want to say thank you for being a part. I want to say thank you for listening. And I hope that the information that I've shared with you has been clear. I hope that it has been an answer to some of the struggles that many of you are having. And that is why I do this work. I know that many of you have fallen into the very same common trap. What is that trap, Jen? That is the trap of starting a nonprofit and not knowing how to run it. The trap of starting a nonprofit, Jen, and not knowing how to structure it. The trap of starting a nonprofit, Jen, and funding it out of your own pocket and then having to stop and dissolve it. The trap of, Jen, I started my nonprofit and I'm doing everything by myself. Jen, I started my nonprofit and we don't have any help. Jen, I started a nonprofit, which is a community-based organization, but we don't have any community support. And that's not how you are designed to be. Listen, when you are ready to do this right, when you are ready to not just take your great idea, but how about this? Take your great idea and prove that it meets a community need. That's when funding begins. When you are ready to know not just how to start it in terms of a checklist and what a search engine said, but how to structure it so that your organization can generate the resources that are available and that you are designed to have to do the work that benefits the community. Our missions matter. Our work matters. So funding is not the problem. The problem is many of you didn't start this thing. I know what Google said. I know what Cousin Chat said, but it's a search engine. It's giving you just a very simplistic answer. It's not giving you the total answer. And that's just the truth. Your organization shouldn't be struggling financially. Your organization should not be struggling with showing, communicating, validating to the community that your work matters. We're a community-based organization. The work that we do, we should be able to describe. We should be able to inspire. We should be able to inform and educate. We should be able to show how we benefit the community. This is not a personal project that you started, but it is an asset to the community. And once you show that, the community will be attracted to it and want to support it. Why? Because it benefits the community. All right? When you are ready to have this conversation on a real front, my name is Jennifer. I am your nonprofit expert. Over 39 years, May is going to be 40 years of doing this work. And I help organizations not just start, but how do you structure it? How do you create the strategies and the systems within it so that you can raise the money to sustain it? When you're ready to have that conversation, when you're ready to do the work of putting your organization together. Now, this is the good news. You may say, Jen, I'm too busy doing the program. That's okay. My team and I do the work of structuring it for you. And if you did it wrong, my team and I can get it right. We can have your organization structured and ready to sustain and support and to raise funds in less than 30 days. When you are ready to create the infrastructure, I have information. You can do it yourself, or my team and I can do it for you. And we can have it done for you in 30 days. All right? Money is not your problem. Let's get your organization structured. Let's get those pieces and those elements that Google and Cousin Chat didn't tell you about so that you can raise the funds, so that your organization can not just start, but that your program now has the resources to grow and to expand and to achieve the level of impact that you dream for it to have. It's possible. We just need to put the infrastructure in place. That's all that's missing. And we can have that done for you quickly. My name is Jennifer, your nonprofit expert. When you want help, reach out and say, Jen, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready to finally put the infrastructure in place so that our organization can attract and generate the revenue that we are designed to have. You've got 16 streams of revenue. 16. Your organization should be bringing in those streams of revenue so that you can do the work that's going to benefit the community. All right. Thank you all for listening, and I will see you next